We are surrounded by the unknown. What we think we know may be an illusion. To be alone with the unknown can be dangerous. Science now discovers what our ancestors knew instinctively. Today's science fiction may well be tomorrow's truth. Here is your host, Hilly Rose.
There are a lot of strange things that we deal with on this program and into the world of paranormal. And I'm really getting not to like the word paranormal because that sounds like it's out of the normal. And sometimes we investigate things that seem very, very normal. It's just that science doesn't really, or traditional science really doesn't want to stay up with it. And that's why I was sort of interested. I met a guy by the name of Jess Fritsch at a UFO convention. And he was talking to a whole lot of people about something that's compelling in his life. It's something called electrogravitics. Now, there are 2 or 3 other people around who look at this, and certainly a guy by the name of Thomas Townsend Brown has been looking at it most of his life. And I'm not very scientifically bent, so therefore I'm going to have Jess tell us what in the world electrogravitics is, and maybe by the end of this hour we all will understand something that has to do with the propulsion of UFOs. Now, that's the one thing that I am dead set against, is all of the scientists who tell me there is no way that UFO ships could be here because it breaks the laws of physics. Well, yes, that's possible. It might break the laws of physics because maybe we don't know all the laws of physics, and maybe there is another physics system. So that's why I really want to get into this electrogravitics. Jess, welcome to the program, and can you really spell out for me in simple terms that I can understand what electrogravitics is?
Well, first, Ellie, thank you very much for giving me a chance to speak to the whole nation on this. My whole purpose has been to try to get out this information because electrogravitics, which was invented and coined, the word coined by Thomas Townsend Brown, who passed away in 1985. It is so simple that it's unbelievable. There was a program on PBS just last night dealing with traveling to other stars and the propulsion systems that they were working on. But again, none of them realize what is really available.
Well, I sort of have this problem with cold fusion. You know, it's around, demonstrably it works, but regular science doesn't want to even look at it. They just laugh at it. And so I guess electrogravitics fits into that same kind of thing. It's proven that it works, but everybody laughs at it.
Most of the people I have dealt with have stated to me that they didn't think it ever occurred, it never went anywhere. Brown himself was denied even being able to acknowledge the fact after he turned it over to the government. And that was in 1960 when he finished up everything.
Well, specifically, what is electrogravitics?
Electrogravitics means essentially the control of gravity, literally. Now, a lot of people try to use the term anti-gravity with it, and this is incorrect. Because essentially what it's doing, it works like a capacitor. A capacitor is used in electronics. It's like a little reservoir for electricity. And it usually builds it up in it and then releases it, and builds it up and releases it. This working, but it's an extremely high voltage DC or direct current, and that's pulsed. It's like a rhythm, a pulsar, a timer to use it to throw it out onto the surface of the craft. And the whole craft is the propulsion drive.
Well, you're talking about UFOs now, but
that's with UFOs and our craft, and I'm stating our craft.
You mean
United States?
You mean regular airplanes that we have in our Air Force?
The B-2 is the low-end use of this technology. It is not an airplane in the sense that air is used to go over the wings to cause lift. It's what I'm starting to call more of a hybrid. It uses merely a little bit of that at the start, but once it gets going, the field is developed around the craft. It doesn't need the air at all.
Then what propels it?
It's gravity. And essentially what it's doing, if you have a positive and negative charge in your capacitor, your positive charge is creating a gravity well, what's known as a gravity well. It's, in a sense, pushing the fabric of space itself down. and the negative charge is causing a gravity hill. That's pulling it up. So together, they're creating a wave, or a gravity wave, which is best described like a surfer on a surfboard. And it rides that wave towards the positive charge. And essentially, by changing your polarities, you can change your direction.
Okay, you're getting just a little ahead of me. As I said, I really know nothing about technical things. So
Right.
let's go back, if we can, to the very beginning with Thomas Townsend Brown. He was born back, what, 1905, something like that?
Back in the very early days, about 1905 and that, in the 1920s, he was working as an assistant to an astronomer by the name of Byfield. And Byfield was a classmate of Einstein. So we have the connections of Einstein's looking at gravity, control, or relativity, and this sort of thing. And some of Byfield's studies that he was seeing found very interesting. He gave to Brown to take to see where it go to. And what scientists were seeing then, astronomers were seeing, was that stars throw off what's known as a gravity wave. It's a natural forming wave like that comes out, comes from the star itself.
So, you mean the stars in the sky?
Right. All the stars, just like our sun is a star.
Well, now, you've gotten to Byfield before even talking about the Coolidge tube. Now, Coolidge, invented the X-ray, is that correct?
Yeah.
The Coolidge X-ray tube was what Townsend started with. And he, as I understand it, he sort of noticed that these X-rays, or rather the X-rays emanating from the Coolidge tube, had nothing to do with the effect he was looking at, but the surge of power was causing the tube to move.
Right. What he had asked Byfield, Brown did, and then asking Byfield what would be the best medium for this type of thing. And Byfield told him a capacitor. And this is the key effect in it.
Now, what's a capacitor?
A capacitor, like I said, is a device, is an electrical device is the best way to describe it, as a reservoir for electricity. Like a reservoir holds water back.
I didn't realize you could hold electricity. I mean, I realize in a battery you can.
Right. A battery, in a sense, is like a reservoir also. In a sense, it's kind of like a capacitor. But it doesn't have, it's similar to it, but not exactly. It has several plates inside.
Okay.
It has your positive and negative charges.
All right. I think I follow you so far.
All in that.
All right. So he hooked up, Brown hooked up with this guy Byfield.
He was an assistant to it. Byfield gave him this information and had him start working on it. And it took him from the mid-1920s until 1958 to finally convince the U.S. government that it was real. The reason for this is Brown was a perfectionist in his setting up his experiments in college. He was so precise in it that by the time he got finished setting up his experiment, the bell would ring and he'd have to take everything down. So he never finished anything. So he had no college degree. He has quite a long history of being in the Navy and before World War II and doing a lot of other things, inventing how to stabilize the cable that's held behind a ship to get rid of mines in the water. He invented that. He also invented a vibration stabilizer for the P-38.
Now, he worked on perfecting methods of ship degaussing. What was that?
It's a way that they, underneath, when they're doing the soundings underwater to get the surface, the different size in that. He actually did some things in a submarine and some very well-known
in
expeditions.
In broadcasting, we have a degausser. We use it to erase the molecules on tape. So, in other words, a tape that's got sound on it, we put it through the degausser, and it rearranges the molecules, and we have a perfectly blank tape again. So I was wondering if that had anything to do with the Philadelphia experiment in Tesla.
Well, no, he had nothing to do with that experiment.
Okay, so and this degaussing then was not to make the ship disappear.
No, this was something completely different.
Okay, it just struck me those words.
Yeah, he was always very interested into gravity, and because of that, and his work and so forth up through like 1958 he had one time where, because he didn't know the college degree, he was confronted by those with PhDs in physics and that he was throwing ion wind. Ion wind can be thrown off and cause lift also. So that's when he put it in his experiments inside a vacuum.
Well, he may not have had a college degree, but he was a lieutenant commander in the Navy.
He got that through working up. He started out as a basic recruit, and he was promoted. And he was given up. I mean, he was at the labs in Washington, D.C. for the Navy, and had no degree, and yet was working with civilian ones with PhDs.
That didn't sit too well with the PhDs, I'm sure.
It's probably a little bit, but he really proved himself, and that was more of it. You had to go in there and really improve yourself when you're working like that.
Well, now, you went to 1958, but in 52, Brown conceived of something he called Winter Haven. What's that?
Winter Haven was a project that he was submitting at that time for kind of like a Philadelphia experiment. For the atomic bomb project for developing this. In 1956, a document was produced by a group out of London, is titled Electrogravitic Systems, an examination of electrostatic motion, dynamic counterberry, and barocentric control. And it speaks of all, at that time in 1956, of all of the universities and companies that were working on this type of thing, this process, which has become known as the Byfield-Brown effect. And it was in 1958, 2 years after this was published. Now, they were hoping at this time, 56, to get an attack bomber Mach 3 speed capability, a disc craft, since a disc is the best design for this type of craft.
All right, are you leading me at all to the possibility that some of these discs that we see in the sky are really United States government craft?
That's correct. They built, you see, in 1958, when he finally convinced the government, the U.S. Air Force, that this really worked. He then finished up his experiments in 1960. And I have silent footage from 1958 through 1960 of these experiments. And in that film, there is what I consider to be the underside or the main power source for the prototype craft. And in 1960, he then finished his work and turned it over to the Air Force. And from that day on, he was then unable to even work in this field.
Because,
number one, he had no degree. The government took it away from him, and he was banned from even talking about it.
So let me understand this now, because I'm a little confused. You say this was in 1960. The Arnold sighting of UFOs, which was the first time that we had, a big mass publicity, newspaper reporting on this, was in 1947. So you're talking about 13 years later.
Right. There are true UFOs, meaning extraterrestrial origin, not ours. And I usually tell people, if it's painted black, it's ours. If it's not, you've got a possibility of a real craft, real sighting. Because what we have on our disc, which in the first prototype, manned prototype, was built around 1960. And they stated that it would take them about 10 years to fully develop the technology. So by 1970, roughly, it should have been fully developed. And the craft that they were hoping for, a Mach 3 disc, now cruises along the top of the atmosphere at around 54,000 miles per hour. And that's just its rough cruising speed.
All right, so what you're telling me here, Jess, is that Brown gave this information to the United States government, that they developed the B-2 bomber, and also must have developed these saucer-shaped discs because it works best as a saucer-shaped disc. But now, we're, 42 years later, and nobody has cottoned to this? Nobody has told this secret? Are you saying the government has kept this secret?
That's correct. One of the the second director of the Lockheed Skunk Works organization of Lockheed Corporation was asked a question, does the United States still have any major secret defense technologies? And he stated in his quote from him, it says, "We have some new things. We are not stagnating. What we are doing is updating ourselves without advertising. There are some new programs, and there are certain things, some of them 20 or 30 years old, that are still breakthroughs and appropriate to keep quiet about. Other people don't have them." And that was actually what he stated. That's his actual quote. We know that a lot of the stuff done out at the Nellis site, which is the Groom Lake facility, which everyone knows is Dreamland or Area 51, which is part of the Nellis Test Range, which is a very, very large area, it's a bombing range for the Air Force, and the Navy also uses it. In late 1994, a video was smuggled out of that base by one of the civilian contract workers, the controllers out there, of this craft, which is on U.S. government tracking cameras and U.S. government radar. They actually lock radar on it. It's a tape about 6.5 minutes in length, and it moves from one site. They have these sites all around the range. It moves from one site, Site 13, to Site 30 within a very few seconds. Extremely high velocity speed. And in the S-30 site, they're able to zoom the camera in very close on it, where you can see the black craft itself and the immense plasma field that's around it. And you can actually see that it is in 4 separate areas on the craft. And this is the key of how you control its direction.
So, you're blowing my mind here with a lot of stuff. You're saying that this guy Brown, Thompson Brown, that he developed this electrogravitic theory way back.
That's correct.
Therefore, this whole story about reverse engineering supposedly going on at Area 51 and other locations is not true.
Well, I normally state that we don't have any hard evidence to state that. Anything that if you can't prove it, we have had people come out and state that there is this thing. But again, they can't prove it. So we can't really say that it's occurring.
All right,
It might be, but we don't know.
Okay, they may be doing other things or just confirming the work of Brown.
Well, all I know is that what Brown did, and I know from this video, observing it when I first got it, which was in the early part of 1995, before I actually got it a shortly time after it was smuggled out of the base. It was about 2 months before it was aired on the Sightings TV show in early 1995. I was able to identify what it was that I was looking at by simply the fact of knowing how electrogravitics works.
All right, so what you're saying is that the B-2, which is what, the stealth bomber, is that the other name for it?
Well, the full title is B-2 Advanced Technology Bomber, and that's the key, advanced technology.
But
you don't call it an aircraft.
And it doesn't use fuel?
It uses fuel because it has what's known as there's 4 electric jet generators. They're flame jet generators on board. So you actually have a craft that sounds like a jet aircraft. It's taxiing around and everything like that. When it takes off, it's loud, just like a regular jet aircraft would be. But once it gets up, it quiets way down.
All right, I'm beginning to understand this, and it's making a lot of sense. But I think we have a lot more to discover here as to what we're doing and how it relates to UFOs. So we're talking with Jess Fritsch about electrogravitics, and we will continue in just a moment. I'm Hilly Rose. We're talking with Jess Fritsch, who is a field investigator or lecturer and works with MUFON. We talked to the head of MUFON about a week or so ago, and they sure get into a lot of interesting stuff. But this one is more than interesting. It's utterly fascinating. So you're telling me, Jess, that this guy, Thomas Townsend Brown, developed all this material, that he died, that he was not a hero in his own time, but that the B-2 stealth bomber, or whatever you want to call it, is not operating the way other aircraft operate. You say it has some engines, but do they get it started electrically, or is it self-powered?
It's pretty well self-powered, from what we can tell on that, and based on Brown's own patent, which I have, all his patents. The drawings actually describe exactly how it would function, how it works. Now, the Air Force says that if the engines are recessed back in because of heat and reducing the heat signature and that sort of thing, in case of seeing it on radar. But believe it or not, under this recessed area where the engines are back, there's like a black area behind the engines. That is where a collector plate is located to collect the excess ions. How this works is that through the engines, they emit out ions, which is your negative charge. And along the leading edge of the craft, of the wings and that, it's charged positive. This is you creating your positive and your negative charge and building the field up around the craft. It actually, if this aircraft or the B-2 would fly through a cloud, it would cause the cloud to swell way up around it. Not like a normal aircraft that flies through or just goes a little over the wings. They would actually be very, very visible because of the plasma field that's around it. It's not the same kind of plasma field around as it is around the disc, because I feel the disc has a much, much higher voltage on it than what it does on the B-2 bomber.
So it's stealth because you can't hear it. It doesn't have an engine noise. And it's what kind of effect does it have on the pilots, though? I mean, what speed does it go at?
No effect at all on them. They're well insulated from it and that. Even the crew inside the disc can do incredible things. In 1991, from the Discovery space shuttle and that, a video got down and smuggled out of an object flying along the edge of the atmosphere. There's a flash, and it pulls a right-angle turn and shoots out. Now, the NASA tried to say that was a maneuver, and that was an ice particle from a earlier urine dump. But if it was a maneuver, you have the jets turning, you're going to also see the stars in the background, and they're slowly going down, and you can follow it. If you have a maneuver of the craft itself, the shifting its position to make that object do that kind of movement, you're going to also see a different movement on those stars. They're going to shift, and they don't. They continue going down a straight line, even after that. Simple geometry, simple high school geometry. They were able to, we have an individual with MUFON did a report on it showing that it has to be a real object. They were able to indicate that it was 1,700 miles from the shuttle. It was flying along the very edge of the atmosphere, and they were able to clock it at 15 miles per second. That's 54,000 miles per hour. Now then, when it pulls a right-angle turn, it accelerates to over 430,000 miles per hour in 3 seconds. That's estimated at about an 18,000 G turn. Now, you'd think that if there's anybody inside the craft, they'd be a blob along the side of the wall.
That's right.
But they are inside their own gravity field, as we are inside a gravity field here on the Earth. We do not feel the Earth's rotation at 1,000 miles per hour. If you were to stand at the equator, that's what you'd be feeling, 1,000 miles per hour. But because we're inside a gravity field, the Earth, we don't feel that. The same principles occur to the crew inside the craft. You could be making a turn with a coffee cup sitting at a table in there, and it won't even ripple.
All right, let me understand some things here, Jess. You've talked about this B-2 bomber that uses this technology. You've alluded to some saucers that the government has, and I'll get back to that in a moment. But I wondered about something like the Arizona sightings of a few years ago. This was something that seemed to be, a quarter of a mile in bulk, or a couple of football fields, and it made no noise whatsoever, but yet lots of people saw it going overhead. Could that be using that technology?
Yes, it is. In that we have, everyone is probably, your listeners have heard about the black triangles that are being seen all over the world.
Right.
That's a TR-3B black manta. It's about the size of a jet fighter on the small range. The big one, which is a triangle, elongated triangle in a sense, is 1.8 miles in length, and that is what flew over Arizona, over Phoenix. That is not a wing, as they indicate. I had actually talked to people who witnessed it and were underneath it, and it blocked out the stars in that, and not in a wing shape. That is what I call our battleship or our aircraft carrier. The disc and the smaller black triangles can actually land inside of it. It also carries two magnetic rail guns inside of it, which shoot out brilliant pebbles. It's a Star Wars weapon, which they stated that they were not going to do after a while because it was already developed at the time that Reagan was even talking about it. What this does is it takes thousands of plastic pebbles, or little balls, and accelerates them through this magnetic rail gun out to 1,000 miles per second. And in the 1991 video, that flash is caused, it's an optical illusion from the camera of this rail gun's being fired. And the two streams that they see going out on the video is this brilliant pebble.
So are these pebbles there to diffuse and deflect incoming missiles?
That's what it's designed for. It could actually take out a missile that's coming up. Say you have a warhead that gets up at apogee, even before it gets to apogee. This craft could take that out. And on top of that, it could go over and hover over the site where it was fired from, the silo, and take that out. It would be essentially like a nuclear bomb going off.
Well, you talked about these pebbles, and I wondered, would the pebbles deflect the incoming missile because it gets confused?
No.
It's targeting. That's not the design.
No.
The pebbles are actually.
It would vaporize whatever it hits.
Okay, so they're actually offensive weapons.
That's correct. And one of the things I was trying to get Hoagland, Richard Hoagland has the full video. I've been trying to get a hold of it because in the 1991 video, after all this is going on, they pan the camera down on the shuttle, and you can see the shuttle bay, and you can see down below the shuttle. And in lower down below it is this huge triangle that fired those. And it shows this immense craft. Now, I've come to believe that the United States has a base on the far side of the moon. Logically, that's where that craft was probably built. Because it could be built without being seen. Because you have something that's 1.8 miles in length. That's how big it is.
Well, that raises the question, then, Jess, if we have that kind of technology, why are we still playing around with the old technology for missiles? Why don't we use this technology to send craft up to Mars or the moon or wherever?
It's the United States Space Force. It's military. No other country has this technology. If we were to bring it out, we would be saying that it exists and it works. The U.S. space program itself was for the public's eye, not for what was really going on and what it is today. And that it is kept so secret that very, very few people really know about it. The physics that's involved with this is outside the physics that's taught inside the universities today. I consider what's taught in universities in the physics range a subset of the whole. And that's the reason why the laws that we see in that don't rely to this area.
All right, so let's go now to these saucers that you talked about, because we haven't really focused on those at all. You're claiming that the Air Force has these saucer-shaped objects, and what is the purpose of those objects?
Well, what we feel is it's an attack bomber. If you can imagine that. It's an attack bomber disc that could go from New York City to Perth, Australia, which is on the west coast of Australia, in less than 3 minutes. That's 12,000 miles in less than 3 minutes.
That's faster than the missiles go.
You better believe it. You don't want to fire one from it and then keep on going straight, because it could turn around and hit you. But it could actually outrun anything it fired even. It has an ability to go from standing still to disappear in a split second. It has all of the capabilities that we know of or we see in UFOs themselves. This is how they work. I've been formulating over the years in that even how to make the jumps, the longer jumps in that, say, to another star, say 20, 30, 100 light years. And if we know in that you take and have like 3 generators, what we call a gravity generator, and you take what I'm thinking of is the negative charge, and you focus on a point in space, say, just for example, 2 light years out, and you pull that point to you, because the negative charge is manipulating the fabric of space itself, is pulling it up, or pulling it towards itself. Pull that point to the craft. Once you get that point of space to you, you turn off your generators. Now that point will snap back to its normal position, and when it does, it takes the craft with it.
Okay, I'm trying to understand what you're saying here. In other words, if I were to get into my automobile and I want to go from New York to Los Angeles, I point my car in that direction and I travel in that direction, propelling the vehicle toward Los Angeles. But you're saying with this system, I focus on Los Angeles and Los Angeles pulls my car to it? Is that what you're saying?
No, what you're doing is you're pulling Los Angeles to you.
Oh, okay. Well, it's like a magnet. If I have a magnet attracting that, then that energy is pulling me toward Los Angeles.
A little like it, only that this is a little bit different because you're actually manipulating the fabric of space itself. We know that if you get around a black hole, it's affecting into the fabric of space itself and causing kind of a hole in it. With an immense amount of gravitational fields involved. And the same idea would be to this. We've all heard from Star Trek with warp speed. Warp is essentially warping the fabric of space itself. If you take a piece of paper and you push it on a flat surface together, it's going to kind of bow up in the middle. That's warping. That's what you're doing with space itself. Instead of traveling the full length of that paper, you run straight through. So you bring the points closer together.
Okay, I understand the concept. What I'm not understanding is if you understand this and you know as much as you do about this, how come nobody else knows about it?
Hilly Rose?
Well, the government has done real good at keeping it quiet because, and they put it out. I was in Roswell, New Mexico in 1997 for the 50th anniversary. I had a guy, individual come up and tell me, it didn't go anywhere, it didn't work. And this is what they want people to go out. Even on a book report that was done for this electrophysics system, it was put out by Thomas Ballin.
You've called me 3 times so far.
The person who did the review of it stated, and his underlying theme is that T.T. Brown propulsion, once developed, will usher in an age of flight so revolutionary it will make all previous aviation, from the Wright brothers to Space Shuttle, constitute the Stone Age of flight. They themselves don't think it was developed. And many of the people out there that I've come into don't believe that.
So it's the old story. Don't bother me with the facts. I know what I learned in school, and I'm not going to change my mind.
A lot of times that happens in that, and you have your trained physicists, those with PhDs. Unfortunately, I tell people I have to retrain these because they've been conditioned to look at things only one way. And if they were to step outside of that and come up with some revolutionary idea, they face the chances of being totally banned and blackmarked in their field, because it doesn't fit in with their accepted theories of that time. And this is normal in all areas of science, unfortunately.
All right, you're saying to me that extraterrestrials use this same kind of physics, electrogravitics. They've learned this however they've learned it. But are you suggesting that they have sent ships here and that they are here now?
Oh, yes. I would say that their form of electrovitics is far more advanced than ours. Where I would believe that what we have here is just on the infancy of it, just the beginnings. And we will advance more and more. If we were to bring this out and into the public, it'd be revolutionary, I think. In 1996, I did a lecture in Los Angeles, and had a lady in the audience who spoke up during the thing. She wanted me to know that T.T. Brown was one of the co-founders of NICAP. And I think you know of NICAP.
Sure. Yeah, that was Major Kehoe's.
It was the civilian research area of UFOs before MUFON.
Mm-hmm.
And this is true. Here you have Brown being one of the investigators into the thing and very interested into UFOs themselves in the 50s. And yet developing this on the side. What she told me there, because I was talking about the propulsion drive itself, she said that there was a bigger picture. And I looked at her and smiled, and I knew right away what it was. It was free energy. The same technology can produce free energy. In the 1970s, Brown was doing some experiments here in Sunnyvale, California, and taking a rock, just a plain rock, and you dry it out, and you brush on copper on two sides for your terminals, and you connect wires to it, and then you charge it, very, very high voltage DC, 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 volts. That rock stays charged permanently and never lost its charge, no matter how much you used it to run a radio or one everything. It's that same principle can be used with electrovitics to produce free energy, unlimited, and never have to recharge the unit. And that's what I'm working on right now.
As an inventor?
Taking a little bit of what he is and going from there to come into it. And I will then patent the idea once it's ready. But I can't really say too much more on that. But it is an energy, a way of producing power to run your home, to make an electric vehicle without batteries, never have to recharge it at night. All of this.
Well, of course, the people who push cold fusion, like Dr. Malov, he says that you can get like 300 gallons worth of gasoline, the power equivalent of 300 gallons of gasoline on a gallon of water.
Mm-hmm.
So, but they're two totally different functions, right?
Well, in that type of thing, or cold fusion, you have to put something in to get something out.
Right.
Essentially, what I'm saying is once this is started, the first unit, which is charged, can also charge all the other units. So essentially, there's no more use of fossil fuels.
It's sort of like perpetual motion in a sense, then.
Perpetual motion in some way, sense, but there's no moving parts in it at all.
Well, if this is such hot stuff, and the way you describe it is, then why isn't General Electric in there and some of the other large companies developing this?
Well, because they may have developed something like that for the government, and they're still kind of wondering how they're powering the craft, because that's one of the keys. If you're using fuel, like a jet fuel or whatever on it, and you have an engine inside or something to produce the power from that, you've got a problem of atmosphere. I've talked also about a nuclear power, and that's possible. They have done the work to make portable nuclear reactors and shield them well enough.
All right, we have a long way to go here. We've been uncovering some amazing things, beginning to understand electrogravitics. Good heavens. I didn't think I ever would. But Jess has explained it pretty well. It's Jess Fritz we're talking with. And want to talk a little bit more about ETs and the use of this power. You stick with me. I'm Hilly Rose. Electrogravitics. Big word, and I never thought I'd understand it, but I'm beginning to. And I'm beginning to understand why it's very important in understanding about UFOs, about our technology, our government, and why we do some of the things that we do. Jess, let's zero in, if we can, on ETs. I said, well, then this is the power that probably the ETs are using. And you said, oh, yes. But how do you know what ETs are doing?
Well, I go back for myself. In 1961, when I was a teenager, waiting to the school bus to go to school, had a sighting here in Saratoga, California, with two white discs come in and, in a sense, hover over me. But when they did it in a way of creating an X above me. And they did it twice. That was my first real sighting of a true UFO, what I consider a true UFO. I've had at least two that I know of face-to-face contacts with extraterrestrials. One group that looks just like us, meaning of the white race, of the Caucasian, and the other being allowed to wake up in the middle of the night with a gray standing next to my bed.
I'm sorry, with the what standing?
A gray.
A gray standing, okay.
Yeah. One of the small ones, a 3.5 foot, very large, black eyes, kind of grayish colored skin.
Mm-hmm.
I believe, in talking with others, that I have been selected, and I've been fed or information and being directed in a certain direction in my life to find this and to get it out. So that's one of my my drives in my life, and that to really find out the truth on this thing and make it public.
Well, when you say you have seen these ETs, that's one thing, but have you communicated with them? Are they helping you in any way develop this electrogravitics?
That's what I feel that they're doing. I think, but unfortunately, like a lot of these, it's hidden, and I don't remember everything. I'm not allowed to. But it's something inside of me that is kind of directing it.
So you feel these ETs are directing you to perfect which has already been perfected. If it's being used on the B2s and it's being used to develop these saucers, it's already perfected. Why are you still working on it?
Because it's being kept from the public. And in this day and age, with the fact that fossil fuels is a problem, we cannot rely on that forever. We're polluting our world immensely. The free energy device that is what I'm trying to work on, based on Brown's work, would eliminate all pollution of that matter, of air pollution and even ground pollution, because we would not need to be producing or digging out for coal or producing oil, which is immense problems. We have areas like China. China wants to have a car production and sales on the same order as that of the United States. And they are already seeing air pollution, smog, in their major cities like Beijing. I was in China last year, and they have car dealerships everywhere, cars everywhere. So we have that problem, and they have a billion-plus population. That's going to use up the fuel, fossil fuels, even faster than what we're doing now.
Well, I have been to China also, and I have seen the pollution problem there. It's huge. It's a vast pollution problem. One of the reasons that the United States government is not interested in the Kyoto Treaty, because it excuses China, and yet we're supposed to cut back on our pollution. So it would seem to me that if we do have this secret, that we would share it with China and get rid of the pollution, share it with other countries. And, we won't share the nuclear weapons, and I understand that, but a lot of people have that technology anyway, even though we are not willing to share it. But we ought to be able to sell pollution plants or power in some way. Or is this the kind of thing that almost anybody with the knowledge can produce very cheaply?
Yeah, it could be done very easily once they know about it, but...
well, that's, of course,
very few people know about it.
That's what kept Tesla from becoming popular. Edison wanted to put a meter on the electricity and make money on it, whereas Tesla said, no, let the people have it free.
Well, see, that's one of the things with Tesla in that he had a benefactor, J.P. Morgan, and they were working on an experiment of the tower to beam electricity out to ships at sea. But see, Tesla wanted to do it so it was free, where you could virtually take a plug and plug it into the ground and have power. But he was going at it. Once J.P. Morgan found out about it, that Tesla wanted to give it away for free, he cut off all his funding.
Can't make money on it, forget it, huh?
Right, and that, fortunately, is still that type of mentality in that area. With the government not releasing this, it's the mentality of it's my ball and you can't have it. General idea, concept in it. And you have to understand it was developed for the military. And things in the military are very, very stingy to the rest of the population. They're spending billions and billions of dollars, American dollars, our tax money, on these things, and not telling us about it.
Well, when you talk about these saucers, are they using them for anything? I mean, I can understand they're using the stealth bomber. That I understand. But what are they using the saucers for? Just just to test them, to see, because you say the electrogravitics work best in a saucer shape. So what are we doing with those saucers? That
is unknown. We believe that it is the United States Space Force now. That's part of it. There was talk a few years ago that the U.S. Air Force is going to be changing its name. And by 2010, it was supposed to become known as the United States Air and Space Force. And by 2025, the air part was supposed to eliminate and be just strictly the United States Space Force. This was the talk at the time of that. But we don't really know what's going on. I actually have documents that I got a hold of off the internet that indicate what they were hoping for, what they were trying to do. But again, like I said, I read that one statement. We have this technology, but no one else has it. And it's this old Cold War mentality that's involved there. You never want to give away your secrets to the enemy. And the United States looks at the rest of the world as their enemy almost.
Well, are you suggesting that these vast amounts of sightings in Mexico and other parts of Latin America and over Britain, in Turkey, that these are our ships, or do you think that they are?
No. I totally believe that we have groups here from other star systems and have been coming here for a very, very long time. You have to kind of look at each sighting very closely and see what the craft looks like. And that's one of the keys involved in it. Now, there's also a lot of falsehood going on, hoaxes of sightings. And I warn people to be very, very cautious of those. I mean, the photo is too good. There's something wrong with it, such as the one in Mexico, that disc flying over and going behind a building, and then it's just not seen anymore. That one is very suspicious.
All right, well, I understand this. So where are you going with this, and where are we going with this? Meaning that if the ETs are around, then perhaps the story of Dulce, New Mexico is true, that there are living ETs down at the bottom of the seven levels of Dulce, or what goes on at Wright-Patterson. Are these stories true, that the United States government does interrelate with ETs?
I think there's a possibility of it. Again, until we have actual proof, we still have to put a question mark on it. We just cannot accept things literally and right off the bat. There's a lot of people, when they go to UFO expos and so forth, they want to believe everything they hear, and they're looking for it. And when I do my lectures, I tell people, don't take things at face value. Investigate it. Learn about it. But be cautious. And that's why I always state that in my lectures and that. And I supply the very low cost in that to people, documents I have that I've been able to get a hold of. And I encourage them to do other research and other looking on the Internet. But when you go on the Internet, you find a lot of them don't think it's ever been developed. But you can learn a lot about it.
Well, who has the Thomas Townsend Brown papers? In other words, who, when he died, who did he leave all of his work to?
Well, there is someone in Florida. He has a group there that supposedly has copies of his, or has his lab notes. Talking with his daughter in '96, and that she said that she would like to see them to know if they were or not. They have some also still. His daughter does, and a lot of other material. But a lot of it was taken by the government, of course. What I've gotten was a silent color film of his experiments that show quite a bit. What they do is they show a picture of a calendar, and they would indicate the date on it, and then they would do the experiment. They were using just a little old Super 8mm home movie camera to record the experiment. And it shows lifting experiments and others. There's even a wing, section of a wing, showing lift on that using electrogravitics. And it has some other items on it that is quite interesting.
All right, so you mentioned this earlier, and I'm still a little bit confused on it. We all know that air comes around the wing of the plane and gives it lift. But you're saying that's not how these B-2s operate, or how electrogravitics operates. What gives it the lift?
As I said, it's the same idea when I told you about the causing a gravity wave. That is actually causing the lift. And once you get moving on it, it just be able to control the direction by changing polarities, by changing the pulse rate, and the amount of energy is put out on the wing surface can change directions.
Well, what is gravity? Now, gravity, we all have the pressure of gravity upon us. Is it an electrical medium of some kind?
What was found out is that electromagnetics or magnetics, electricity, and gravity are all interrelated, interchangeable. They're related to each other in that, and one affects the other. When we have a magnet and we take the iron filings and you put it around it and you see the field around the magnet, the little pattern, that's actually believed to be not the magnet itself, but the fabric from our dimensions to the next dimension up. So you're looking interdimensionally. And
I'm sorry, I don't understand what you just said to me. What do you mean by interdimensionally?
Well, we live in a three-dimensional world. We have height, width, and depth. That's the first three dimensions. And there's higher dimensions. A group of mathematicians worked on it for years and have proven mathematically up to 26 dimensions. These higher dimensions up. Now, one of these dimensions is nothing but pure energy. And by able to tap into that, you have your energy source. And that's essentially what is being done with this device that I'm working on. It's actually tapping that higher dimension. And then it's just like water flows downhill, that energy flows down.
All right, we're getting a little technical here, and I'm finding it a little difficult to deal with. But the papers of Thomas Townsend Brown and the patents that he took out must all be on public record, right?
Some of them are. Now, I wouldn't doubt there's certain ones that are not. But I do have 11 of his patents, and I do have them available to people. They're quite good in that, and you can really see a lot of it, including his one of his experiments where he took a T form and two 18-inch diameter discs hanging on a string on the side just to suspend it, and then you use it to run up your power down to them, your positive to a forward area, a wire, and the main part of the aluminum disc is negative. And then it would be able to spin so it wouldn't tangle with the wires. He used an experiment of 50,000 volts DC at 50 watts of power and got 12 miles per hour movement of these discs around in a circle. When they pulsed it, now, when they had the same voltage, same wattage, but pulsed it, and that's this pulsing factor in that, it nearly tore the rig apart. The acceleration was so incredible.
So, Jess, what are you attempting to do here? Are you seeking funds for your work, or are you just trying to get people to understand the basic principles here?
I'm trying to let people know that this really exists. We have so many of them talking about, well, maybe 100 years from now we might be colonizing or working out into the solar system and that. And it would take years, decades, and thousands of years for us to get to another star, the closest star. It's not true. We can do it right now, and we can travel all that distance right now. We have the technology in that, and we need to bring it out and really put it to good use. Even with these disks, with the kind of speed, say you had an emergency, landslides, earthquakes, and it takes days to get medical assistance into an area. And it's usually very difficult to fly it in or whatever to get to it because the roads are all been messed up with the earthquake or whatever. This can fly in there in minutes and land right on site. And you can build a craft that has a fully functional operating room in it with all the medical equipment and everything you need. And you can get it there in minutes, not days.
Okay, we only have 30 seconds here, Jess. If people want to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
Write to me at PMB 430. The PMB stands for Personal Mailbox. And it's 1556 Halliford Avenue in Santa Clara, California, 95051.
And you will send them information about it?
Yes, if they send me a self-addressed stamped envelope, I will send them information.
All right, well, I think I think I'm beginning to understand electrogravitics. It's very exciting, and if it's really being kept from us, what a tragedy. We'll talk more about it. I am Hilly Rose.